Well, TAMPs really, if you think about, where SEI started and where the mega TAMPs, kind of came from, that was the first thing to outsource. That was the first thing that made sense to advisors to outsource. I mean, they knew that they, weren't very good at investments, and they were very happy to turn to somebody, who had some expertise in there. So what's happened is that they've had to, and I think this is a really good thing for the end clients, is they've had to adopt and include and integrate more tools. First it was you need to have a good onboarding, solution. Well, now it's onboarding proposal generation. I think the next generation, the next turn here will be the integration of planning into the TAMP solution so that the plan is linked to the investment solution so that any change to the plan, immediately kicks off, instructions to change the investment portfolio.
That's Matt Regan, president of a Philadelphia-based TAMP called Wealthcare that has tightly integrated financial planning into their investment outsourcing for advisors. I spoke with Matt about the need for more innovation and disruption in the TAMP space, how the recent spate of TAMP mergers and acquisitions is changing the industry, and a whole lot more on this episode of the Wealth Management Today podcast. Hey, it's another fantastic day in the wonderful world of wealth tech. Welcome to episode 76 of the Wealth Management Today podcast. I'm your host, Craig Iskowitz, and I run a consulting firm called Ezra Group. We're experts in everything related to wealth tech. We deliver growth-oriented solutions to banks, broker-dealers, asset managers, RIA aggregators, as well as their wealth tech providers through our premium advice and targeted market research. On this podcast, I speak with some of the smartest people in the industry who are on the leading edge of both technology and innovation. And please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and share it on your social media networks. And now, without further ado, here is the podcast.
And I'm happy to introduce our guest for this episode of the Wealth Management Today podcast. I have Matt Regan, president of Wealthcare. Matt, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Craig. Great to be with you.
I'm glad for you to be here, Matt. I'm recording this. I'm actually in London here for some family business. So I hope
Nice.
my audio doesn't cut out. My video doesn't cut out. Hopefully we'll keep it going here. Where are you calling from, Matt?
Outside of Philadelphia. The firm's based in Richmond, Virginia, but we have a small satellite office here in the western suburbs of Philadelphia.
Beautiful. I love Philadelphia. I grew up in the New Jersey suburbs.
Okay.
Philadelphia.
Okay, close by.
Down in Cherry Hill. Yeah. So, Matt, can you give us a 30-second elevator pitch for Wealthcare?
Sure. So we call ourselves a technology-enabled RIA. The firm was founded in Richmond, Virginia in 1999 by Dave Loper, who invented the industry's first goals-based financial planning software, known in the marketplace as FinanceWare or Envision, or we call it GDX 360 for the goals-driven experience. And on top of that goals-based planning software, we've created a fully integrated technology platform that includes goals-based planning, an investment framework, so a TAMP that we manage about $3.5 billion on behalf of our advisors, as well as a trading and rebalancing engine. So this fully integrated technology stack is surrounded by human capital. So we provide advisors compliance, operations, marketing, trading and rebalancing, billing services. And what it all adds up to is an end-to-end platform that advisors can use to as a complete outsource solution to run their practices on. So today, we support 150 advisors across the country, many of whom use their own DBAs, some of whom use the Wealthcare brand, but all of whom are our partners, and we provide them the services that they need to grow.
Love hearing that story, Matt. I'm just making notes here. So before we get into the details of what you just said and ask you some questions that I wanted to ask you about the market, the industry, and what's going on, you've got a long background in financial services. Can you just give us a quick overview of how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Yeah. I actually started out on the clearing end of the business in the securities lending department of a clearing firm. But really, my first, engagement on the client side was I helped banks in the early 2000s build their online brokerage businesses. So we had a joint venture with Wells Fargo. We started Wells Trade for them, PNC, some fund companies, T. Rowe Price. This is when all the firms were getting into online trading. From there, I joined Bill Hambrecht as one of the early employees there, and we built the open IPO auction IPO system, which democratized initial public offerings. And I ran the broker dealer there. And after that, I worked for a few years at Vanguard, helping them to build the infrastructure that supports their robo-advisor. So it all kind of adds up to a career where technology and operations intersect, and we provide, as we do today at Wealthcare, innovative and disruptive tools to support the growth of alternatives to kind of the mainstream wealth management business.
I just wanted to touch base on the Vanguard part. That's really interesting, and I also think the Hambrecht and Quist experience is interesting as well. But what do you think about the Vanguard's robo-advisor, having built it, and what did you learn from that?
Well, I've said many times before, and we would like to emulate what they've built there. I think, of all the solutions in the marketplace that are leveraging digital technology, planning, investments, as well as trading and rebalancing, Vanguard's probably got the business model right. Dave Loper in the late 90s, early 2000s, had this vision, and that's what Wealthcare was really founded on, was the idea that the technology platform supports the advisor, and that advisor, can be somebody that's more of a social worker than a high-priced financial, whiz. And the technology itself is really the key to delivering the services, and that's where Vanguard is. I mean, they've got hundreds and hundreds of CFPs that are delivering great service through an integrated technology platform. Now, I think Vanguard, will probably screw it up as only Vanguard can. I mean, their call times will be way too long. Their clients will get frustrated. Their website will be hard to navigate. Their security system will be overly complicated. But the business model itself, I think, is perfect.
Well, they haven't screwed it up yet. They seem to be gathering assets at a pretty fast clip. So that hasn't happened. So another thing I wanted to talk about, which I think is interesting, is the move of TAMPs from what we used to call pure TAMPs, or the TAMPs that are offering really more investment related services, to these, as you mentioned, a fully integrated technology stack. What was driving that? Why is now seeming every TAMP having being forced to deliver more technology solutions to the market?
Well, TAMPs really, if you think about, where SEI started and where the mega TAMPs, kind of came from, that was the first thing to outsource. That was the first thing that made sense to advisors to outsource. I mean, they knew that they, weren't very good at investments, and they were very happy to turn to somebody, who had some expertise in there. Certainly that's where Brinker built their business, and again, SEI as well. So the idea that an advisor or a wealth management firm would be comfortable with outsourcing that piece of it was really the beginning. But what I think has happened is, particularly the investment only TAMPs, the ones that are providing proprietary investment solutions, there's a challenge there if you're not at scale. They're getting pinched just like everybody else, in the chain as far as fee compression is concerned. So it becomes a scale business. And what we've seen is the emergence of mega players there. I mean, certainly Orion's acquisition of Brinker is a validation of that. Investnet, SEI, AssetMark. I mean, these are enormous, 50, 60, $100 billion businesses. So it's gotten to be really challenging for the smaller TAMPs, particularly ones, that only offer their own proprietary solutions. Leave aside the fact that nobody can beat, the S&P, for the last 15 years, and active management has been a challenge until recently. So what's happened is that they've had to, and I think this is a really good thing for the end clients, is they've had to adopt and include and integrate more tools. First it was you needed to have a good onboarding, solution. Well, now it's onboarding proposal generation. I think the next generation, the next turn here will be the integration of planning into the TAMP solution, so that the plan is linked to the investment solution, so that any change to the plan, immediately kicks off, instructions to change the investment portfolio. And that's how we built Wealthcare. That's how we started under that same premise. So, I think we would humbly say that things are coming in our direction after all these years.
You would very humbly state that, as a humble person. That's interesting. We are seeing a lot more planning tools being snapped up by bigger players, and with the plans for planning. Their plans are to integrate them more tightly into their infrastructure. Fidelity and eMoney integrating into Wealthscape, and InvestNet and MoneyGuide Pro integrating into their ENV2 enterprise platform, and maybe Tamarac as well as integrating into their insurance exchange. So it's becoming a more of a seamless solution. It's one thing I've written about, that there's no reason for the financial planning data to be in a silo like it is in a separate app. It's just that's the way we've always done it. It's like, why is CRM in a separate silo? Well, because we always had a separate CRM app. So do you see this as a sort of going full circle, where everything started out as one, like on a mainframe computer as one system, then broke it down into PC-based software where every app was its own, now kind of moving back to its own one database for everything?
Well, I would also put it, Orion's acquisition of Advisor in there too. I mean, that's really a validation of the model, because ultimately to have the plan exist independently from the investment portfolio, I think does a tremendous disservice to the end client. And as you describe it, I mean, that was literally the way that advisors did it. Was, you went over here and did the plan, and then you turned over here and said, okay, well, let me go pick a 60-40 or a 65-35, and then, never the twain shall meet. Those two decisions never really intersected. And if you think about it, United Capital did a great job of bringing those two together. That approach, the FinLife conversation, the honest conversation, FinLife was really, I think, one of the early examples of the integration of planning and investments. And interestingly, United Capital is a user of our planning software. That's really was kind of built on our planning software. So there's some parallels there. But I think it's unquestionable that InvestNet's acquisition of MoneyGuide, everything that's going on with eMoney and Orion and Advisor validate the fact that these two activities can't be separated if you're doing right by the client.
We always forgot Tegra 118 buying Retire Up. So everyone seems to be picking up planning tools with the hopes of integrating. But when you mention United Capital, so I love what they've done with FinLife and their MoneyMind and those tools. Mm-hmm. And they really seem to do the right thing, where they say, well, look, where can we add the most value? And the investing side isn't where the value is. We're not going to build a better portfolio rebalancer or a better, other types of trading tools or order management. Let's focus on the areas where we can add value, which is the client interaction, the onboarding part, where you're learning about the client. And that's where FinLife and those MoneyMind tools focuses. Do you see that as where they went and why they used Wealthcare for that? I
do, yeah. And, I mean, look, if it comes down to, another discussion on active management, I mean, Jack Bogle's got $6 trillion that says that we're wrong, that we can't beat it. And so I think once you get to that point and you say, well, what really matters? I think to your point, it's the client experience. Mark Tucci, who's who probably was as important as anybody at United Capital in telling the story and kind of proselytizing. Has great thoughts and has done a lot of deep thinking about the user experience. Where the client sees value in the conversation, and that's really the special sauce of United Capital, and we aspire to that. I have my own concerns about where United Capital ends up existing in the Goldman firmament, if at all. But I do think that part of the conversation, the front end, where you're putting goals, where you're prioritizing goals, where you're creating ideal and acceptable, where you're having the big conversation. That's what our software is built on. That's what United Capital built. And I think that's what really is going to win the game in the end.
I want to take a break from this episode to talk about one of my favorite charities. It's the Invest in Others Charitable Foundation, which is a charity that amplifies the efforts of financial advisors who give back to their communities and communities abroad. Invest in Others provides a platform for financial advisors, their employees, and their firms to increase awareness, visibility, and funding for their favorite nonprofits. Over the past 14 years, Invest in Others has given more than $3 million to 300 plus charities across a variety of causes, including health and wellness, education and youth programs, arts and culture, hunger and poverty prevention, and military, veterans, and more. For more information, please visit investinothers.org. Follow them on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and please make a donation and check if your company will match your donations. You'll double the benefit. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
So you're leading me into another question here. So where do you see Goldman fitting United Capital into their overall infrastructure?
I can't say for sure, but I do think, one way to look at it is that the acquisition of Folio may be more important at Goldman than the acquisition of United Capital at the end of the day, because I think that they can quickly monetize Folio and fractional share trading and direct indexing to create investment products. And that's certainly going on in the industry. There's a lot of the acquisition of Parametric last week. I mean, I see that as something that Goldman can monetize and monetize quickly with the GSAM business, the asset management business. Where UC is going to end up in there, I don't know. I mean, we compete against them to recruit advisors to the platform. We haven't seen as much of them. I don't know if that's a pause or if that's a conscious business decision, but I think we'll have to see.
We will have to see. There's been a lot of speculation about where they're going to fit that in. So back up a stack. You mentioned that FinLife, they use part of your technology. Which part do they use and why?
Well, when UCP put their stack together, it was built on Salesforce, was the original super integration that they did, which again, that's the client facing piece. And in the middle of that, at the outset, they embraced our financial planning software, which they knew as FinanceWare, as the goals-based solution. So the United Capital advisors would go through the honest conversation, goal prioritization, and then they would move over and use our planning software. I think along the way they kind of appropriately broadened their offering to include eMoney and MoneyGuide Pro as solutions because advisors were coming to them with that as their planning software. So we're one of the solutions there. But I think the spirit of goal prioritization, some of the work that we did around, creating multiple goals has been, integral to the success of FinLife. And they've, look, we give them all the credit in the world. We think they did Wealthcare better than we did in some cases. They were better marketers of the solution. At the same time, we were focusing on a little bit of a different model, providing, kind of a full outsource solution to advisors that were seeking independence and keeping their own brands. And the reason is, Craig, is because, you've written about this, quite effectively. If advisors aren't creating, repeatable, scalable businesses that have a framework, a philosophy, and an approach, they're not creating true enterprise value. We have advisors come to us all the time. We support quite a few ensemble practices. And when they talk about the valuation of their firm, we have to tell them, look, if you have 7 advisors that are all doing 7 different things, 7 different ways, you don't have a lot of enterprise value in your practice. It's only when you can create a repeatable practice, a scalable practice. Mark Tibergen will tell you about this, to the better than anybody else. That's where you create true enterprise value.
Indeed. Talking about how you compete. So can you explain a little bit about how Wealthcare competes in the market? When you say you compete against United Capital, you probably compete against Carson Group. There's a lot of firms out there offering platforms. You probably compete against independent broker dealers, right? They offer technology platforms and compliance solutions, right? So the affiliation. So what's your messaging and how do you compete? What types of firms are you looking at?
Yeah, so you're spot on. I mean, those are the people that we compete against. Our story is a little bit different in the sense that we actually have, for better or for worse, a proprietary technology stack that is our own, and the only one at this point that's completely integrated, so that one ticket runs through the process from the planning to the investments to the implementation, trading, and rebalancing. We call it the IPT process for the investment policy ticket. So it is literally, one, fully integrated technology stack from end to end. Now I'll give our competitors props. They've done a really nice job of integrating best-in-class tools. So a planning software can be integrated with a TAMP solution and stuck on top of a portfolio management and record-keeping system, and you can put Sugar CRM in front of it, and you've got a nice solution. But ours is different because it's proprietary. At the same time, when there are other parts of the market that we don't compete with. In other words, we're not writing checks like Wells Fargo to get the next group from UBS for 330 times trailing 12. I mean, that's not the game that we play in. And likewise, if an advisor is looking for, a warm desk and a compliance officer that doesn't pay very much attention and the highest possible payout, that's not the game that we're playing either. That's a different part of the market.
Indeed. So the proprietary technology stack, we mentioned that earlier, that more TAMPs are building those out. So what is the next step for these? Where do you see these technology stacks going? I mean, InvestNet was one of the first ones to have to merge the TAMP and technology, and a lot of firms have followed on. But once everyone has that, what's the next piece of technology you see that becomes table stakes?
Well, I might take that in a little bit of a different direction. I think it might be kind of yelling into the wind where the technology goes, because I do see the consolidation of the TAMP industry as more important than anything else. I mean, I think you're going to get down to a handful of players, and they will have great technology. I mean, AssetMark has great technology already. InvestNet, I think is a little bit distracted right now because the lowest hanging fruit there is what they can do with the insurance side, and they can really monetize that marketplace. So the integration of MoneyGuide and the InvestNet TAMP, I think, is the next thing. I don't think it's there now, but I think the emergence of kind of the handful of large players in the TAMP world is going to be more important than the technology improvements that come around the edges. I'll be interested to see what firms like Adhesion and InvestMark do, because they've taken the fateful step of being TAMP technology providers that have a TAMP. Not everybody goes in that direction. Tegra is happy to provide TAMP technology and not be a TAMP, for instance, to use an example that you talked about. But I think table stakes are going to be, a very, very, strong planning front end that integrates the plan with the investments, slick onboarding, a digital delivery system. Maybe the last thing that'll come along is that user experience that we talked about. But I think, proposal generation, and then, ultimately, I think it has to back into a household-based trading and rebalancing that has the logic of a Wealthcare or a Life Yield in it. because that's the other piece of this that we're never going to go back to is running portfolios at the account level. The household level just has way too much tax alpha associated with it. So I think all of that together means that you're going to get an end-to-end solution that serves clients at the household level.
So you mentioned LifeYield. Do you guys work with them?
No, it's interesting. We know them well. And what's interesting is, again, to go back to Dave Loper, who founded this company, he started with the premise that the implementation of an investment solution has to be done at the household level because of tax location and smart withdrawals, tax loss harvesting. That can create so much tax alpha within the household that it's the best way to do it. And we've had that as a philosophy all the way along. LifeYield, I think, has done an awesome job of creating a tool that tracks and quantifies the tax alpha that's created. The Morningstar study from 2014 that talks about alpha, beta, now gamma, talks about kind of the whole approach, the whole household approach that the advisor needs to take into consideration. And they came up with, a rough back of the envelope estimate of 140 basis points can be created. LifeYield has, created an algorithm that actually puts a score on that. We've looked under the hood together and the logic that we use in our process is almost identical to theirs. But I think they've done a great job of kind of communicating the value in a numeric fashion, that the implementation and the rebalancing can provide.
Matt, this has been a great conversation. I'm just about out of time. Can you let everyone know where they can find Wealthcare and how can they reach out to you if they're interested in learning more?
Absolutely. So wealthcaregdx.com is our website. We are, always happy to talk to advisors, advisory firms, those that are interested in the goals-based approach, are interested in our outsource solution. And if anybody wants to reach out to me directly, I'm Regan at wealthcarecapital.com. I'm happy to take any and all inquiries and tell our story. But we really appreciate the time, Craig.
Oh, I appreciate you being here. Thanks a lot, Matt.
All right. Take care.